enjoyed a bit of pizza from Rustico, and that was provided by Don McPhee. So we thank you to all of those people for all they've done. Let's give all of those a clap and thank you. An introduction, really. I don't know whether you know this, but for the past 2 years, Eastbourne Foodbank has provided 280,000 meals into Eastbourne each year. In May, that's last month, alone, we provided 1,868 meals. So the effects of the cost of living are pushing too many people in our town into poverty, and we believe this should be a big issue for each of our candidates for this election, and we really look forward to hearing questions from the floor and clear, convincing answers from our panel. Can I just say, if anyone feels the need to talk privately to somebody afterwards, maybe something triggers, nothing political, we can't deal with that. If you just feel a bit stressed or a bit emotional about something, we do have people here that will talk to you privately to help you at the end. Please ask if you want that. So introduce now over to Richard Garland, who's going to chair through the rest of the session. Thank you.
And welcome to this amazing, sunny, and for the moment cool space. Too close to the mic.
It's not you, it's me.
I've heard that before. Right, it's great to see you all here today, as Howard said. And thank you for inviting me. My name is Richard Garland. I am a small business in the town. I'm the director of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm also the chair of the recently established Eastbourne Town Board. This is the first time such an event. This has been held here. And as I want to reiterate what Howard said about thanking the Foodbank and St Elisabeth for hosting this Hustings for Hardship. So a quick explanation of how the next hour or so will run. I'm going to begin by giving each of the candidates an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we'll move on to the questions. As candidates, you shall all have 1 minute to answer each of the questions. And to assist you, I have Robert at the front here, who is going to give you a 15-second remaining banner held up, and then you will get an alarm to tell you to stop. The reason for a minute, as you can imagine, we have a lot of questions to get through, so we need to keep everything at a fast pace. On the basis that we have at least 6 questions in today's session, that will give every candidate the opportunity to speak first and to also speak last. Eastbourne Foodbank have been out in its Foodbank satellites and out in the town centre collecting questions from the public. And the audience here as well today have gathered earlier to propose some additional questions, and I think these have been collected up, and if we get some time at the end, we'll also include those. To you, the audience, thank you for taking the time to be here, and thank you especially to those that have come here early and prepared some additional questions. We simply won't have time to get through more. We will try our best, but we regret in advance if we don't get to your specific question. But we will endeavour to cover as many issues relating to hardship as possible. So thank you for your understanding in advance. In terms of housekeeping, there are the usual few things to run through before we start. In the event of an emergency, please follow the instructions of the Foodbank and church staff as you make your way to the nearest fire exit. And these are the 2 corners at the back of the room, and also the room that you came in, also the door that you came in through as well. So, we recognise the individual and community significance of these hustings, and we all want to be in a better position when we leave, to feel better informed, to make a positive choice on the 4th of July. And to do this today, we do need to lay down some small ground rules. Please, try not to speak over one another, be polite, be constructive and respectful to each other and the candidates. And let's ensure that this is a fair debate. So please help me and the staff by following our lead. Dignity and compassion are at the heart of Eastbourne Foodbank's values, and so let's make sure we maintain those values today. This event is not party political, it is impartial, and we want to hear from all the candidates equally. Right, so general housekeeping out the way, let's move on to hearing from our 6 candidates. So for you, our parliamentary candidates for Eastbourne, we would like you to begin by introducing yourselves, your party, and explain how you will improve the lives of Eastbourne residents who need to use the food bank. Now I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes each to open the hustings, and for this round we're going to go in alphabetical order. So if I can start with Caroline Ansell, Conservative.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. When I put myself forward for Parliament, my DNA, if you will, the banner under which I campaigned was no one left behind. And that's my heart to this day. As the Member of Parliament for Eastbourne these last years, I've worked on the all-party parliamentary group for the Trussell Trust, who sit behind and underpin the food bank, and I've worked very closely with them on policy. I've worked very closely on carers leave. You may recall how important I found the question of food when, back in the day, I had to resign my government role over free school meals, because it was important to me that every provision was made for the families and the children that I represented. How will I work for those who find themselves in this position? Well, there are 2 really key aspects here. One is around our local economy and making sure that there are good opportunities for building skills and employment, and secondly, affordable housing. So on those 2 measures, I work very closely with businesses and colleges to open up opportunities. I've worked very closely with the Department for Work and Pensions for kickstarters, for our young people to have their first job and their first opportunity in the world of work. I've worked very closely on hospitality, because 1 in 4 jobs in our town relies on that, but it is still hauntingly seasonal, part-time and insecure work, so there's more to do on that. I've worked to secure the taper and the uplift in government to make sure that benefits more closely allied to inflation, and also on childcare, which is again one of the very important costs associated with the cost of living. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Pass the microphone to on the left to Mark Ashdown before.
Mark Ashdown, I'm representing Reform UK. You might not have heard much about us. People call us racist and fascists. I can assure you that I haven't met those people in our party. It's a very easy thing to say, to bring someone down who you don't like. All our candidates, and I can show you them on my phone if you want afterwards, you can look up online, they're from all sorts of colours and backgrounds and ethnicities. They're poor people, rich people, tradespeople, professional people, right across the board. We're just families like you that have kids and grandchildren, and we just see the way that the country has declined over many years now, and some of us are standing up to do something about it. I was background checked by Reform, and it all happened very quickly, and it's called parachuted in here to give the people of this town the opportunity to vote Reform should they so wish, and this is why this is the only way we have the opportunity to do that. My background is in engineering and construction, where I was put into building sites that were failing, and I returned around to see what's wrong and sort it out, make things work. The food bank, which I visited this morning, incidentally was a very humbling experience. I had to bite my tongue because it was very emotional. Are no different to any other food bank in the rest of the country. I don't think you're going to find a solution just in this town to sort the problems out of the country. They are national. The problem is that Conservatives and Labour over many years have spent the North Sea oil money. They've got us in debt to the tune of trillions, and the interest on that is billions. And we need to do something about it. I would like you to help us, I wish I had more time, to stand up against what's going to happen in the next 5 years and show our position.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Josh, I'll read the little down.
Well, thanks so much for hosting this. My name's Josh, and I can also confirm that I'm not a racist. I'm an Eastbourne boy, born and bred. In fact, I went to school just down the road at Cavendish, and I've been able to go and do and utilise a lot of the opportunities that our town has given me, despite some really tough patches in my childhood. We know the meaning of hardship in my family. When I was a kid, I was one of those who turned up on the first day without a school jumper because we couldn't afford it in time. I was the kid who dreaded going or getting invites to birthday parties because while everybody else could afford nice presents for the people celebrating, we went to pound structure.
High likelihood that they need additional support to deal with issues such as debt, family breakdown, addiction, poor physical or mental health. Many will need employment or legal advice. And our policy, therefore, is to contribute to the work done by all food banks and develop them into community advice centres for those most in need. We would train and fund the cost of 2,500 advisors to work in 2,500 food banks to the poorest in society to have free and easy access into timely help in their hour of need. Thank you.
Mike Wilson, Green Party.
You've done introduction before. Hi, I'm Mike Munson and I'm standing for the Green Party. My background includes many years of working in the NHS and in mental health charities, in community support services, where I have helped people solve their problems with disability assessments and claiming PIP, with emergency payments, benefit sanctions, rescheduling debt, and with rent problems and eviction. Austerity and public spending cuts caused these problems. They were introduced by Labour and they were made worse by the coalition. I will oppose any and all cuts to public services. 10% of households in the UK own 43% of the wealth, while nurses are accessing food banks. The Green Party would tax wealth and pollution fairly and provide a massive injection of money into the NHS and social care. Real wages have stayed the same for many years, but minimum wages have fallen behind, and they're not enough to live on, and neither is universal credit. I am campaigning to increase the minimum wage to £15 per hour and add £40 a month to universal credit. The benefit system, which I have also accessed, needs to be fair. The Green Party will abolish the bedroom tax and the 2 childcare and increase disability benefits and carers allowances. Families need more help. We need to create Sure Start centres to provide preschool daytime care, and free school meals will be provided in education and reintroduce school nurses and counsellors. Thank you.
Finally, Paul Richards, Labour.
Hello, thank you very much. I'm Paul Richards, I'm the Labour and Cooperative candidate standing for election. We're going to wake up on Friday week with one or two things happening. One is Rishi Sunak returning into number 10 Downing Street and appointing his cabinet. Maybe how long will be, I don't know. And getting on with another 5 years of Conservative government, or there'll be a change of government, and that will be a Labour government. And that's how our system works. So one of those two things. I'm here to tell you that I'm here to put you out of business. I don't want there to be food banks. And in 2010, there were virtually no food banks. That was not part of our local scene at all. They had grown exponentially in those 14 years, and they've grown not because there are more people in need or have made choices that have put them in that situation. They've grown because of government policy. First the coalition government, then the Conservative governments, talking austerity, to the heart out of our community, to change the welfare system, the way people get work, the insecurity around work, and so on, has meant that increasing numbers year on year, as Cresswell will tell you, are reliant on emergency food parcels. So our manifesto says very clearly, we want to end mass dependence on emergency food parcels because they are a moral scar on society. How do you achieve that? You get growth in the economy. How do you achieve that? You have a social security system that helps people with all kinds of things from mental health to getting back into work. How do you generate growth? Well, you invest. You use the awesome power of the state to actually create jobs, to help businesses, to revive the high street, to put that money back into our local communities. Because politics is about choices, and a moral basis of our politics should be that there should be no poverty, and that we should have a system that allows people to have dignity and work. And so when I say vote Labour, I'm saying that in 5 or 10 years' time, we don't have to be here in a food bank, because food banks won't exist.
Right, thank you all. So we'll move swiftly to the questions. Please remember the time rule of 1 minute. I acknowledge it's quite a challenge, and I'm sure the candidates will rise to that challenge. We'll get through as many questions as we can. This is going to be a little bit of a double act between myself and Juliet, I believe. So I will start with the first question, which was collected earlier on social housing. With the lack of council housing and private rents becoming more and more expensive, what will you do to make sure there is more affordable homes in Eastbourne? So we're going to start on my left, looking down to the right, I'm going to start with Ian Garbutt.
Thank you. A very important question. When I grew up, I was fortunate that within 2 years of leaving college, where I had been partially supported to get my degree by British Land, I could afford my own house. And that was the ambition of a lot of people. Today, very few children growing up can look forward to ever owning their own house. I have grandchildren. My oldest grandson is 33. He pays, he's married, no children, and he pays over £1,200 a month in rent. He cannot afford to ever save a deposit. 1 minute up on the
Well, Richard, same question.
Okay, so I could say the answer to this in a single word, and the word is build. You've got to build more homes that are affordable for rent or to buy. You've got to increase the supply so that landlords and private companies can't profit from the squeeze on people's supply. And you need to protect renters in particular from no fault evictions, for example, is something we're going to abolish. The people here probably facing that threat. We're going to empower people to challenge unfair rent hikes, which is something that drives people into poverty. And we're going to end the scandal of leasehold charges, where somebody has to pay hundreds of pounds more than they thought they were going to. Don't laugh, I had my hair cut this morning. And the barber said he's a working man, his partner works, he's in his 20s, mid-20s, can't afford to get on the housing ladder. And that's a basic broken promise, isn't it? If you are working, two of you working, you should be able to have somewhere to live that doesn't rip you off and bankrupt you. And that's why I say build.
And I also say build. I'm sure there'll be something of a theme. I want to take you on a quick tour of our town. My first home was a flat in Gore Park Road, not far from here. I was a newly qualified teacher. It cost £22,000. Who wouldn't wonder at having property that was just twice your salary. So starting salary is £10,000. There are serious opportunities in our town that we have not materialised. Bedford Well Road. We should have had already 300 affordable new homes on Bedford Well. There was money from the government years ago to make safe the land because it's the old waterworks. That project absolutely needs to be expedited. The same at the Magistrates Court. It's another council-owned site. All of these brownfield sites, Debenhams, TJ Hughes, all of these sites are hugely important. We could have 1,000 new homes in our town simply on those sites where they're owned by the council. If the council can't develop them, they should sell. There was an affordable developer waiting in the wings for Bedford Well Road. 300 homes.
So I'm getting a bit of a deja vu because I've heard this all before, and I'm sure you have all in the room as well. I know probably more about the construction industry and building local authority houses and houses than possibly everyone in the room. The problem is supply and demand. Day one economics lesson. We haven't built houses. The planning law, I suffered under the planning law, it's diabolical. It needs reforming. I have ideas on that. I haven't got time to tell you about that today. But one question to Caroline would be, if I'm allowed to say that, how do you stop people coming from other counties and other countries if you're going to build 1,000 homes, whether they're local authority or not? Evictions, very easy to say it, but they hurt people. It's called the unintended consequences of your actions. If you stop being able to evict people, it makes it more expensive to have people in houses, and therefore the rents go up. All these things you do introduce will push rents up every time. All these good intentions are damaging.
Well, we face a housing emergency. We're in the midst of it now, and my generation is the generation that is feeling some of the brunt of it the most. We heard about buying houses for £20,000 some years ago. I bought my first flat, for £185,000 just down the road a couple of years ago. But there are people who are struggling to even get onto the rental market, never mind being able to buy. What's a Little Democrat solution? Well, we've committed to across the country building 150,000 social homes every single year, because the solution is to build our way out of this emergency. Eastbourne Borough Council is building its way out of this housing emergency. Just down the road, you've got some new flats going up at Cavalry Crescent, Southfields Road as well. We've seen some go up in, and the council is bidding for cash to develop the Bedford Well Road site. We have too many developers who have planning permission, who are sitting on land and making money in the process by waiting the value to go up. They should use that land or lose it.
The Green Party has a policy called Right Homes in the Right Place at the Right Time. We currently get built in our country the homes that housing developers want to develop, because they're the ones that make them the most profit. What we really need in this country are two-bedroom places. There's been planning development that's gone through Eastbourne Borough Council, and we've ended up with 4-bedroom detached places. These are not the kind of things we want built. What we need is to change the planning laws so that local authorities can specify what is needed in their area. We too will build 150,000 new homes. We will end the right to buy, and also that will keep the social housing stock in social housing. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have a question from one of our Foodbank clients, and I shall read it out on her behalf. Her name is Kaylee, and she says, I'm a mum of 3 children, one of whom is disabled. After paying my £1,300 rent, I'm left with £150 per month. How am I meant to live on this? Who are we going to, Richard?
We'll start with Richard.
Well, Kaylee's question is the question of the age, isn't it, really? Which is that how do people expect to live when all the prices are going up, when the cost of everything virtually is more than it was, while rents are going up, Food prices are going up, fuel prices are going up. We're a society where more and more money is being squeezed from budgets, and then what do you do about it is the answer, isn't it? A welfare system that is about social security, not punishing people, access to work that is flexible, so that it's not exploitative and has a decent living wage associated with it, a rental market that we talked about, which is fair and equitable, but most of all, a change of government, so we have a different value set governing all of these different policy areas. After 14 years, something has to give. We can't just have more of the same, because people like Kaylee will just get more of the same. My argument is we need to have that change, which is what this election is all about.
Thank you. And I too obviously recognise for Kaylee how tough things have been, and particularly when you're raising children, if you're raising children on your own, particularly with a child with a disability. I have a child myself who has additional needs and including a special school system. I think the first thing that I would want to say is around those opportunities, particularly around childcare. There's been a very significant uplift in the childcare that is now available. We need to work really hard to make sure it's available for children with those additional needs. It also might mean then for Kate, she can consider, perhaps for the first time, looking at her previous work, perhaps before she had children, to find her way back into the employment market. We are really encouraging our employers to be disability confident, to extend to carers' need, to recognise all the challenges that someone like Kaylee will have all sorts of talents to bring, so that she can find fulfilment too, if that is a good way forward for her.
Well, I would say to Kaylee, you've heard it all before. You've heard it for 20, 30, 40 years, the same old story reciprocated. The problem is mismanagement. The other parties, the main parties have had a go, they're off the professional politicians, now need some practical people with common sense to run the country, and the company. So basically, Kaylee needs to bite the bullet. Einstein said madness is when you keep repeating the same thing, expecting a different result. So if you keep repeating your same thing and voting for the Lib Dems or Labour, don't come to me saying why haven't things changed? Because I'm telling you now, you will get the same result.
So it might be the case that Kaylee receives carers allowance or is entitled to, and the level of carers allowance in this country is abysmally low. Carers do an incredible role in this country. My mum is a carer for my little brother, and does a great service for him, but also to our community, like hundreds of thousands of carers across the country. So we need to raise the level of carers allowance, particularly close to Liberal Democrats' heart as well. Some of you would have seen some of the reports in the video that Ed Davey shared about his role as a carer for his son. Another thing in terms of Kaylee's experience is that her child may need to receive paediatric care. And there have been concerns expressed by local paediatricians about changes being made to paediatrics that could result in more families having to go over to Hastings to receive care. Going over to Hastings, that costs money, that impacts on the cost of living, and that 150 quid that's left at the end of the month won't cover many taxi fares to Hastings and back. So we need to fight to keep our DGH services firmly in Eastbourne as well.
I am a mum of 3 children, one of whom is disabled. After paying my £1,300 rent, I am left with £150 per month. How am I meant to live on this?
Thank you very much. Kaylee mentions her rent. We will impose rent caps that make renting fair for those people who need to be in Katie's situation. We will increase our carers allowance by 10%. Josh mentioned that that carers allowance needs to go up, but he didn't actually add any figure to it. We need to be funding these from somewhere, and there's very little taxation in any of the other parties' main budgeting. We have plans to solve the social problems that Katie is experiencing, and we will tax those who are the top wealthiest people in the country to do so.
Thank you. Part of this goes back to the last question, the cost of rents and housing. I do feel for Katie. I do know what it's like. My daughter, when she was alive, struggled to look after her my four grandchildren, and one who was severely disabled. If it hadn't have been for my wife and I being in a fortunate position to actually assist her, she would have lived in utter poverty. I don't know what the answer is, but we have to start looking very much closer at this problem of looking after the less well-off, less able, less capable in our society. And it's called putting people ahead of politics.
So the next question is linked to private landlords. So the context around this is we have to move, but we cannot find anywhere else to rent, even though we can afford it, because we need a guarantor. The council has told us they would have to wait until we are homeless to help, and that will place pressure on very costly emergency and temporary accommodation for us and our children. So the question, how will your policies support people and families to better access the private rental market and stay in it? I'm going to start with Caroline Ansell.
Thank you. I think the root of the problem is there simply aren't enough rental properties in Eastbourne. There isn't the choice, there isn't the capacity. And when we last looked at the rental situation, we made a call to agents everywhere, and one of the biggest agents in our town had 4 properties, 4, none of which married up to the need as presented. So the major innovation we need to see is more building and social housing, and also opening up, yes, the whole market. Some of the measures that we've brought in look to restack the deck, if you will, to protect tenants, because there are tenants who have faithfully paid for years and years and years and invested very often in their property. They're rooted in their community, and through no sort of fault they have been evicted, and as you described, the situation with the council means that the council won't step in until they're in that very perilous situation. So there are support measures available, but it is far, far too difficult for people to access the property that they need in the private as well as home ownership.
But how do we go against supply and demand? It's as simple as that. Not enough houses. I'm actually quite against building more social housing. I don't see why most people can't have their own house, it belongs to them. They can work on it, make it better, they can hand it down to their children. I'm really against this trap that the Labour Party try to get everyone into to have a social housing. You're off the housing ladder, nothing to pass down to your children, you remain in this poverty trap, and then you will vote Labour. I can't see another reason for it. I've built local authority houses, I've built private houses. It's cheaper, actually, to build the same house, to do it privately than do it for a local authority. 15 seconds, that's enough, I think.
question is about how do we support folks into the private rented sector. Well, we touched on this before, didn't we? There is a lack of housing, whether it's for rental, whether it's to purchase, and we can't address this problem without building our way out of it. But the problem doesn't end there once you get into the private rented sector. Conditions can be really horrible. Many folks in this room, I've certainly been one of them, who've lived in some pretty dodgy accommodation across the country, and landlords, some of them have been pretty unscrupulous and not resolved situations that are putting folks' well-being and health at risk. So Liberal Democrats are calling for a national register of landlords to ensure that we can better regulate them. We're also calling for default tenancies to be for 3 years so that families can have some security in their tenure. And thirdly is campaigning on a ban on no-fault evictions, which can be grossly unfair and create even more uncertainty for renters.
The Green Party would also end no-fault eviction. It's one of those things that unscrupulous landlords use to remove people from properties and then put the rents up, which is possibly what's happening in this case. Private rental is the worst option in terms of housing, because so much property is made out of that. The rents are way more expensive than mortgages. Social housing is much better quality, and private rental places, we need to have a £49 billion greener homes plan to bring those homes up to standard, so that we're not spending loads of money on trying to heat drafty properties. The energy costs are incredible, and you can't afford to live in them even when you can rent them.
It does come back to supply and demand, and councils are now spending, in fact, in 2023, councils spent £1.6 billion on temporary accommodation. Very good, but that money needs to be spent on providing proper housing to give those families long-term, affordable housing. We're in a spiral where the money being spent on temporary accommodation is just escalating, whilst we're not solving the root problem of building affordable housing and social housing for those people.
And it does just come up again and again and again, doesn't it? If you're knocking on doors and talking to people and chatting the street, this whole inequity of a broken market comes up again, and the personal consequences and casualties of that. I said earlier, build, but it needs to be the right kind of building in the right kind of places too. So when Ireland Bevan was the housing minister, his vision was mixed communities, different sizes, homes. The doctor would live next door to the agricultural labourer, to the man who works on the railway, different jobs, different communities, not enclaves, not gated communities, not those flats that seem to be putting up everywhere, and then, who knows who owns them, what they're into, they're just investments. I don't want to see that happen to Devils. I don't want to see that happen to TJ Hughes. You could be really imaginative in the town centre with some homes of different size and different needs, particularly cooperative housing, and particularly social housing, so that everyone can live together in a community, and that's what we need to get to, I think.
Next, we have a question on around the cost of living.
This is a question from Jasmine, who's needed to use the Foodbank in the last couple of weeks. The cost of living payments helped me catch up, but now they've stopped. But bills and the cost of living are still much higher than they were. What are the next steps for additional support?
I'm going to start with Mark.
Thank you. So, cost of living, again, it comes down to supply and demand, and it's just surprising when I hear people on this panel say, well, let's put up everyone's basic wages from £10 to £15. Why not make it £20, £30, £40, £50 an hour? What about £100 an hour? What's that going to do? The delivery van drivers are going to be more expensive. It's going to push the cost of everything up. So everything else becomes more expensive. That's called inflation. And that is the killer for everybody. So the cost of living can only be brought down by efficiency within government and control of all the things that government is now controlling efficiently. Thank you.
So the question was on what is the plan next in the absence of these cost of living payments. Well, there are many folks on universal credit who are finding that their £91 a week is not covering their essentials. And so what I'm calling for, what Liberal Democrats are calling for, is an uplift in universal credit in line with the Coastal Trust's Essentials Guarantee, so that the benefits that we're offering cover what it is to live in the UK at the moment. Secondly, who's going to pay for that? Well, you have the likes of British Gas or Centrica that own them. They made a profit of about £750 million last year, having made £73 million the year before. We should extend the windfall tax, take more of their profits that they didn't expect to make, and use that to help cover the cost of living for those in our country who are struggling. And in terms of your point, raising minimum wage from £10, it's actually currently at £11.44 and ought to be uprated with inflation. Otherwise, it puts more people into poverty, spend more money on the social security system, which is something that I don't think that you would want, nor anybody in this room.
I've already mentioned increasing minimum wages to £15 an hour and adding £40 per month to the universal credit. And Josh is right, we do need to pay for these things. And the amount of tax raising in the budgets of all the other people's manifestos is minimal. What the scale of the problem that we have in this country, we need to tax way more on things like capital gains tax, making that equal to the tax on earned income. We need to, we're going to raise £70 billion per annum on wealth taxes. We're going to also have windfall tax on gas, windfall tax on the banks, and a carbon tax on business. Because unless we start charging for the destruction in the climate that is being done to this country, there won't be any economy.
Cost of living is something that has probably affected every single one of you in this room, whether you be a worker, a pensioner, or a young person just starting out in life. Inflation has been one of the biggest causes of this problem, and unfortunately, simply raising the minimum wage to £15 merely will mean that employers will put up their selling price of goods to pay for it, and that will in itself create more inflation. We need to rethink this, and we need to actually start taxing the big multinational companies who pay little or no tax in this country, such as the water companies. Thank you.
I've been doing politics for about nearly 40 years now. We've had Conservative governments, we've had Labour governments, and everything I project onto the next Labour government, if we are given that opportunity to serve, is based on the evidence of what they did last time. So we did get 500,000 children out of poverty last time. We did 1 million pensioners out of poverty. We pretty much abolished rough sleeping, if you remember. I mean, you didn't see the tent cities out on the high streets and see people living in the shop doorways last time. So it is doable. It's not
unicorns and, just nonsense. It's a government rooted in evidence of what works. And for people like Jasmine facing the cost of living crisis, it's about reordering the economy so that there are opportunities and that there is growth in the economy, and so that we can spread some of that growth around and redistribute it so that people have all kinds of ways to enjoy life. Even just simple things like free breakfast clubs that Labour will bring in will be a help. But the biggest issue will be growth, and that's what we're offering in the election.
Paul's absolutely right. Growth is the thing. But you talked about looking at the evidence of the last Labour government. I think leaving with record unemployment and a note from your former Chief Secretary saying, good luck, there's no money left. But growth is definitely what we need to target. And one of the really important things that the Foodbank does, that perhaps doesn't get the same recognition as their direct support, was connecting people who come to them with the benefits to which they're entitled. 1 year alone, our Eastbourne Foodbank connected local people to over £1 million of unclaimed support. The support is there. Do we need to make it more streamlined, easier to access? Quite possibly, if people are going without in that way. Same with pension credit, which is a gateway benefit. If we can connect people to the support to which they're entitled, we can dramatically improve their situation. And pension credit, most particularly, can be up to £3,000 per household.
So our next question is linked to welfare and benefits, and that's going to be read by somebody in the audience, Chris Brooks.
I think it covered it actually, but I understand that some parties are promising to reduce taxes and pay for it by cutting the benefit bill. What would you do?
I'm going to start with Josh.
Thanks for the question, Chris. So as I described it in my past answer, you've got oil and gas barons, energy barons making a lot of money out of all of us paying higher and higher bills. Centrica, £750 million. The windfall tax should go far further, and we should use that cash to support folks struggling with the cost of living. This government also gave a tax break to the biggest banks in our country. At the same time as you've got in Eastbourne, officially the busiest food bank in the country, distributes more food parcels per head than anywhere else in the UK. That's testament to the great work of the food bank. It's also testament to the neglect of this town by this government. Those banks should not get that tax cut. Instead, it should be the wallets, the pockets, the bank balances, the lives of ordinary people on the ground here in Eastbourne that should benefit from that cash, not those taxes.
You've heard me talk about a lot about what we're going to spend as a Green Party, and you've also heard me talk a lot about what taxes we're going to raise. I'd just like to pick on a couple of high points though of how we would like to invest. We're looking at £20 billion investment in the NHS budgets and social care. We're going to deliver free elderly social care, dentistry, everything. It's just so much that we need to be improving in this country, and yet the ambition of the other parties is incredibly limited. The Institute of Fiscal Studies has looked at our costings, and everybody says we've got a fully costed budget. We've got a fully costed budget that's absolutely transformational, and they've said it's doable. We're not talking pie in the sky. Things can change. Real hope, real change. Vote Green.
Unfortunately, I don't think this country is in a position at this moment to cut taxes. The Institute of Fiscal Studies have looked at the major policies of both the Tories and the Labour Party and have come to the conclusion that their promises are unfunded. they're unfundable. We do need to look very closely at the rich and maybe taxing the rich, the billionaires, the multinational companies that exist in this country. There are quite a few examples of multinational companies operating in this country who make profits but pay no or very little tax to us. Amazon, the water companies, Southern Water, Thames Water. We need to look at that situation much more closely. Thank you.
If I say that I don't think that a big welfare bill is a sign of success, you appreciate what I mean by that. I don't think that a sign of economic success is that there are lots of people relying on welfare. A successful economy is one where people don't need to rely on welfare, but there is enough money in the system that people can have flexible work and affordable rent and a supermarket bill that doesn't, send them into orbit and things that can be afforded in society. So I think we need to reimagine the system of social security so that it helps people. And two ways you need to do that. One is on the health issue, we can't just keep on having a system that patches people up when they're ill, particularly on mental health. We have to get prevention into the system so that people have well-being much earlier on if they experience difficult mental health issues, so that they get the treatment they need faster. And the second one, you have to wait to find out because I've run out of time. So.
I think to really speak to the question, which was around the number of people who are currently receiving welfare, there's one particular group I would like to address, and I think the person who shared their story with me is in the room today. And they described how on a diagnosis of quite a serious condition, their work simply let them go, and they never recovered their working life. And it is understood and it's believed that there's a whole group of people for whom that has applied. So we mustn't ever write people off. So if there is a chance that we can help people to build a bridge from the social security provision to a reimagined workplace where people can be supported, there can be reasonable accommodations so that they can move back into the world of work, that's vitally important. But what is equally important is around that tax burden and around that support. And I'm really sorry that our local council continues to hold those families on the lowest income, continues to hold them responsible for council tax. Every other council in East Sussex has been able to make that change.
Well, the question is about welfare and benefits. Now, lots of people who are on benefits, they don't really want to be on benefits, but they're actually better off being on benefits and council tax is paid. I don't blame them, one single iota. There's been a policy with the Labour and the Conservatives of actually keeping people on benefits and bringing people in from foreign countries to do the work. I speak to Amazon drivers. They show me on their phones, on their apps, how much they're getting paid. Now, that's a choice for you. You might just want to keep it going like that way. Keep people on benefits, they get depression and all sorts of problems, and bring other people in from foreign countries to do all the work. If you want to keep doing that, then vote that way. It's not the way I see it.
So our next question, we're going to move to the NHS, and that's going to be read out by Mark Dillon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm from the charity East Sussex Hearing, and it's great to see democracy in action in Eastbourne today. My question to the panel on behalf of our charity and many others is this. The crisis in the NHS has seen more people forced to seek redress to their medical needs through the private sector. Whilst this may be a suitable solution for a minority, the vast majority cannot afford this luxury. Those relying on food banks and benefits the least. Many in extreme crisis have nowhere to turn except to help charities. And if not, what is the solution?
Thank you very much. This question is one of the reasons why the Green Party is concentrating so much on massive investment in the NHS. We need to invest in the health of our people. That, in turn, will invest in the health of our economy. If we pay our nurses properly, we will keep nurses in the public sector, not working in the private sector. No company should be profiting from the ill health of the people in this country. And there is a gradual privatisation which is backed by governments successively because they don't want to have to raise taxes to pay for the delivery of the NHS which you own. It is being stolen from you. Don't let it happen.
The NHS is actually consuming more tax revenue every year, like a council. It's well funded, but the money is not being spent wisely. Too much of it is being wasted on managerial and administration, on excessive payment for any drugs. I was talking to a doctor who said that there were drugs available, but they hadn't been approved. He could buy them abroad for a fraction of what the NHS were paying for them. These are the sort of things that we need to change to make the NHS affordable for all. Thank you.
So, I'm glad you raised the NHS because that was my second point I was about to go on to earlier. So that's very fortuitous. Labour founded the National Health Service. I mentioned in our embeddment earlier. He was also the Health Minister who founded it on a very simple socialist principle. You get treatment free at the point of need, regardless of income. Simple as that. And we will defend it, and we will do that to our death in government. We have to shift the NHS to a system of prevention and well-being, so we spend more time worrying about our wellness than our illness. We need to think of it as a service that keeps people in good diets, good mental health, using exercise, all things that we know work. And it's a shame that the Lib Dems and the Tories abolished Sure Start, for example, because that taught people all kinds of useful life skills to keep well, interaction, all those good community events that they held, good for mental well-being. And lastly, we must tackle health inequalities. If you're poor, you're more likely to die earlier than someone who is rich. You're more likely to live longer in illness than someone who is rich. And that is a scar on our society. It is a disgrace that your well-being is dependent on your income, and that must never be the case.
So although I'm a teacher and clearly education is very, very important to me, it was actually the NHS that took me into politics when my then little boy had a shock diagnosis of a life-threatening brain tumour. The only question we didn't have to ask amongst will he survive, will he walk, will he talk, will he be the same boy when he wakes up? The only question we didn't have to ask was how can we afford this? So NHS is absolutely my number one campaign, always. That's my heart for this town. And in the next years to come, we have hundreds of millions of pounds of investment coming to our new hospital, which has in the last years moved from special measures to good and outstanding. We have a new surgery unit coming out of the ground right now, which will accelerate through the backlog. We have that very important shift to pharmacy first to open up more access for people to be able to more immediately deal with some of those lower level complaints. And very much more I'd like to talk about perhaps at the end.
Well, I've just come from the NHS, the General Hospital, where my wife's been treated for
doctors, I know many nurses. I've had many conversations about the NHS. There's a lot of inefficiency there, there's a lot of waste there. It's not me just saying that, that's the doctors, nurses and staff. I have family members who work in the NHS and they tell me the same thing. So what I would say is, number one, unlike Labour typically, say let's chuck some money at it, let's tax the rich, but by the way the rich might just leave and go somewhere else and not be okay. Instead of chucking money at a problem, let's fix some of the issues inside the NHS first. I think it's going to stop me there, it hasn't. 10% of the budget is on diabetes. Let's have a look at tackling diabetes at cause, at the source. After the Second World War, I saw the documentary, there were 47 people in this country had diabetes. Now it's a £10 billion problem. Let's have a look at tackling some of the issues rather than just chuck somebody else's money at it.
Well, when you get the care in our NHS, it is amazing. I was in our DGH a couple of months ago. I was horrendously ill. At the time, my future wasn't particularly clear. And it was the great work of doctors, nurses, healthcare assistants, housekeepers, and the rest that brought me back from the brink. But too many people experienced too many hurdles in trying to get access to NHS care. Trying to get a GP appointment is worse than trying to get Glastonbury tickets. You wake up at 8 a.m. in the morning and you're still 30th in the queue. I've heard a story, actually, the person who told me the story in this room, of someone who set up a circle in their close that they live in, where they call an ambulance if they need it, but then they call their neighbours to take them to the hospital because that will be quicker than the ambulance. We live down in Patton, my first day, I haven't got time to explain it, are proposing an NHS rescue package, which involves a mass recruitment, investment in recruitment of doctors, nurses, midwives, other healthcare professionals, in order to get the capacity that we need to reduce waiting lists and create better access to care for those who need it.
Everybody's doing really well, fine. Everybody's okay. I'm going to keep going with a couple of questions to end. Is that okay? I'm going to stay happy. I'm happy to we can do one more question. One more question. Okay. No, this is your last word.
This is a question. This is a question from the floor today. How could you stand up for those without a voice if your party's policies could harm them? Can or will you go against the whip?
The UK Independence Party do not have whips. We believe that anybody, whether it be on council or in Parliament, should actually be looking after their own constituents and voting on what is best for their constituents, not looking after a Prime Minister or a Chief Executive of the Council who has a whim and just putting their hand up willy-nilly. You have to have people who will look after the people who put them in power. As I said earlier, it's all about people, not politics.
My first job was in Parliament in the early 1990s and worked as a special advisor in the Department of Health and Communities and Local Government and Cabinet Office, and I've worked with many ministers and shadow ministers over the years, and some of them have had to resign. Some of them resigned on principle, like Trident, or one resigned over the bombing of Syria. I've seen people do it and not even break the whip, but actually come off the front bench as a result. And I would like to think that in a similar situation I would consider that too. If the moral imperative was there, then yes, I don't know who the question was aimed at, actually, whether there's a pointed question or not, but I think in politics, sometimes I'm afraid that does happen. If this is our last word, I want to thank you all for coming. I'm a huge fan of democracy, and I think it's wonderful we can have these kind of public meetings, whether you're here because of Christ's teachings, or whether you're here because you're interested in democracy, or just you want to vote in the election next week. I just think it's brilliant that we can do this. It's a shame, I have to say, there aren't more of these. And finally, George Bernard Shaw said, the greatest of evils and the worst of crimes is poverty.
and that's what Labour aims to end.
Well, I guess uniquely I can point to these last years and demonstrate that I have done exactly that. Gone against the party whip, gone against the party line, gone into the other voting lobby with Labour and Green Liberal Democrat MPs when it came to free school meals. And it wasn't because I didn't think the Conservative government wasn't doing a great deal during the pandemic. We were doing that, but I wanted every kind of assistance. And that's why I championed the holiday programme too. I also voted repeatedly against my own party when it came to the work that had to be done to flats across our town. You'll remember after Grenfell, there was a whole raft of new requirements to make safe some of these buildings. Some leaseholders in our town were faced with bills of £20,000, £30,000, £40,000 that was going to mean that they had to sell their homes or to lose their property. So I voted to ensure that they got the support that they need, and I will always put people before politics, and I'll always put my town first.
Well, it'll be nice to meet you in 5 years' time. We'll have the same conversations and the same people are going to say the same things. I'll tell you that now. There's going to be 5 years of hardship coming, and there's only one way out of it. We need to get a beachhead into society and change what we've heard 1,000 times before from the regular parties. You all have minds. There's no point having a mind if you can't change your mind. You haven't had an opportunity to vote reform before, and I think you should really consider it. I'm sorry if I've raised my voice, if I've been anxious and excited. It's just I feel very passionate about what I believe in. And no, I will not be whipped into anything. I have a moral compass where I will do what I think is best for the people.
So the question was about defining the whip. Well, back in 2010, I campaigned for the Liberal Democrats to get an MP here and to get into government. And then the coalition took place. Then, for example, tuition fees were trebled. And so I took to the streets, having campaigned for my party hard and with passion. I also took to the streets with passion to campaign against the decision that government that I had hoped to get elected was making. So I'm not afraid to do that. I'm not afraid to speak up for what is right, even if it goes against my party, if it's what the people of Eastbourne need and deserve. And more than that, I then dedicated my career to addressing some of the consequences of austerity. I devoted my career to working with young people who found themselves in crime and gangs and supporting them out in the absence of support that was coming from the state, with cuts having been made. So yes, it's one thing to vote against your party, it's another thing to take proactive action to mop up some of the consequences too.
The question was about standing up for your own voice and standing up for Eastbourne. First of all, an MP who's elected needs to know what Eastbourne wants. And if you're voting on the basis of a keep X out, you have to vote X, then how can you get your views across based on the policies of any particular party that you may like if you're having to vote out of fear? However, we're not in that situation now. We're in a situation where there has been a collapse of one particular party in the country, and this is pretty much a done deal here. So I'm not saying that your vote doesn't count. Your vote should be cast for the policies that you want represented by your MP in Parliament. If you want green policies, we're not going to win here, but your MP will represent those policies in Parliament. You just heard him say so.
That brings us to the end of the questions. Thank you to the candidates for keeping time. Very appreciated. Robert, thank you for your support. Secretary Elisabeth and the Foodbank staff, and especially to you all, the audience, for your insightful questions and for being respectful and for helping make this a smoothly run and successful event. I would in a moment like to hand over to the Reverend David Harrigan, and who was kindly made today possible by working with Foodbank, and is the only person in the room I should have had a conversation about wardrobe. After David has spoken, you can all remain seated, and we'll make sure that everyone gets to leave safely and quickly as possible, table by table. So thank you for today, thank you for your cooperation. Very happy.
Thank you, Richard. And thank you to candidates today. Thank you for making time to be here today. It was eye-opening as I listened to all of you, what responsibility you have. And regardless of whatever the outcome will be, I hope that you will do it with integrity as you represent the people, of Eastbourne. I hope that's something that you can live by. I certainly wanted to ask questions about young people, particularly in our schools and those things, and we haven't got time for that. But you know where I live, or if you don't know where I live, I'm here most of the time, so you can find me anytime you want to do that. It made me also think how thankful I am to all of you for joining us today, and what responsibility we all have in voting for the people who we want to represent us and in our town. I'm deeply convinced about justice and the responsibility of us all to be a part of our development for our community, and I think that we all play a massive part within that. As part of that, we'd like to close with a prayer. If you're someone of faith or no faith or any faith, I think at this particular time seeking some wisdom would be a good thing for us all. And so for us as Christians, seeking wisdom of God is one of those things. And this isn't a prayer to convince God to get the party that we want to be to get in, but this is a prayer that God would lead us to making the right decision that is best for all people within our nation. So if you'd like to join me in a prayer, that would be absolutely wonderful. I wrote this one especially for today, just for you all. God of all creation and goodness, we place our lives in the sovereignty of your hands. Grant to us your wisdom as we seek the future together. A world that we live in that feels less safe and less uncertain than perhaps the one we once knew. While we navigate this season of life, help us to draw upon your divine source as we wrestle with the struggles of our lives. We pray for all of our candidates today. We thank you for the gifts of who they are and for the skills that they offer to better the lives of all within your service. I pray that you would help them to be leaders of integrity and to seek your justice. Draw their ears and hearts to the sound of your heavenly kingdom, that they may be partners in bringing heaven on earth. And for the rest of us who are uncertain of the future, of what it might hold for us and what it might be, for all the disappointments and angers of what has been and what might be, in our anger and frustration, the sense of the desire for power that trumps the love of our neighbours. Let us not respond with these emotions, but in righteous action that has been witnessed by the people of faith, different faiths and no faith, through our churches, schools and food banks, community centres across Eastbourne, that has been witnessed in the life and through Jesus Christ, our Saviour. We pray that you would lay upon our hearts the vote we are to make that reflects your godliness. But in the meantime, would you fill our bellies with joy, be our moral compass, bring us to laughter in hard times, and help us to sing songs together in making our churches like the home to welcome all within our community. Let us be rooted in who you are, and help us to bring the change to our neighbourhood where we can create a space in bringing the sound of heaven together. May these prayers of gratitude turn our fears into faith and our rage into purpose. And we pray all these things through our Saviour's name, in Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you all for joining us today. It's been a wonderful joy to be here with you all. Thank you.
get what he was saying about diabetes, but some people would have died before being diagnosed. They would not have really been diabetes. And diabetes may be more prevalent now.